What would you do if the person you love most had to leave, and every moment apart felt like an eternity? Toan must travel far to support a new branch, leaving Diem behind, heartbroken and anxious. His mother secretly rejoices at the distance, while Diem struggles to stay strong, tending her fields and selling produce at the market, yet unable to silence her worry. As night falls, calls go unanswered, and fear creeps in. Has he arrived safely, or is something wrong? Subscribe now and follow their emotional journey of love, longing, and hope in this heartfelt story. The morning sun spilled gently through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the modest living room where Toan sat with a mixture of anticipation and unease. Today was no ordinary day. He had just received the news that he would need to leave immediately for a business trip that would take him far away for several weeks. The company had entrusted him with supporting a newly established branch in a distant city, a critical mission that could make or break the expansion. While Toan understood the importance of the task, his heart felt heavy, and his mind was divided. Watching him process the news, his mother's eyes sparkled with a strange delight, a glint of satisfaction that Toan had come to recognize all too well. She moved closer, her voice betraying more excitement than concern. "This is perfect timing," she said softly, though the meaning behind the words was unmistakable. She had long worried about how close Toan had grown to Ly Tu Diem, a gentle, kind-hearted girl who had slowly woven herself into every corner of his life. To his mother, this trip was more than just business. It was an opportunity for her son to be away from someone she still viewed with cautious skepticism. She smiled, patting his shoulder, a smile that was warm but carried a subtle, unspoken agenda. Toan, however, could not focus on his mother's satisfaction. His thoughts kept drifting to Diem. Just yesterday, she had surprised him with a small lunch she had prepared herself, insisting he take it to the office. Her meticulous care, her gentle voice, the way she always remembered the smallest details of his life, all of it now clashed with the reality that he would be leaving her side for weeks. He felt a lump form in his throat as he imagined the empty hours that would stretch between them. Diem entered the room quietly, her eyes immediately meeting his, filled with a mixture of love, worry, and the faintest trace of fear. She had heard about the trip from Toan's mother but had not wanted to express her feelings too loudly, fearing it might burden him further. Yet, the moment was unavoidable. "Toan," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, "you'll be careful, won't you?" Toan moved to her side, taking her hands in his. Her skin was soft, warm, and familiar, a comfort he knew he would miss terribly. "I will," he replied, trying to inject confidence into his tone, though even he could hear the uncertainty lingering there. "Everything will be fine. I promise I'll take care of myself. And I'll call whenever I can." Diem's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She bit her lower lip, struggling to keep her emotions in check, but the tears spilled anyway. Toan gently brushed them away, cupping her face, trying to imprint every detail of her expression into his memory. "I'll miss you," she murmured, the words breaking slightly with emotion. Toan felt a pang of helplessness, wishing he could do more than just offer words. "I'll miss you too, Diem. More than you know," he said softly. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, letting the silence speak what words could not. Outside, the sunlight shifted, casting long shadows across the floor, marking the fleeting moments before he would have to leave. Finally, with a reluctant sigh, Toan released her hands. He could feel the weight of her gaze following him as he packed his bag. He glanced back once more, committing her image, her tear-streaked cheeks, and the small, nervous smile she tried to muster into memory. His heart ached, knowing that the journey ahead was not just about business, but about enduring the painful separation from the person who had quietly become the center of his world. As he opened the door to step outside, Diem's soft voice called after him, "Come back safe, Toan. Please. Come back safe." And with that, he stepped into the morning light, carrying not only his briefcase but also a heart heavy with longing and the silent promise to return. As the sound of Toan's departing footsteps faded into the distance, Diem stood frozen for a moment, her hands still trembling from their last embrace. The emptiness left behind was sudden and sharp, as if the world itself had shifted without warning. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, the image of Toan, his calm voice, the warmth of his hands, the faint smile he had given her, lingered in her mind like a persistent echo. Shaking off the lingering sorrow, Diem turned her attention to the day's work. The fields awaited, and the rhythm of her daily chores was a small comfort. A way to ground herself in reality rather than in longing. She moved among the rows of vegetables, carefully inspecting the leaves, pulling weeds, and harvesting the ripest produce. Each task, though familiar and routine, felt heavier today, as if her hands remembered Toan's absence before her mind could fully accept it. She hummed softly to herself, a fragile attempt to soothe her racing heart, while the sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the earth beneath her feet. By mid-morning, Diem had gathered enough produce to take to the local market. She loaded her basket onto the small cart and started walking along the dusty path that led to the bustling town. The chatter of vendors and customers filled the air. Yet it all seemed distant to her, a muted background to the vivid, relentless thoughts of Toan. She tried to focus on selecting the best vegetables, arranging them neatly, and calling out to potential buyers with her practiced cheer, but every sound, every movement seemed overshadowed by the nagging worry in her chest. What if something happens to him? She whispered under her breath, almost afraid the words would give them power. The thought struck her like a cold gust of wind. She knew the roads Toan would travel were long and sometimes treacherous, winding through mountains and narrow lanes. Her imagination conjured scenes of him caught in rain, struggling with delays, or facing unexpected dangers. Each scenario made her chest tighten, a reminder of just how powerless she felt in the face of distance and circumstance. Even as she interacted with customers, exchanging smiles and friendly words, her mind wandered. She remembered the way Toan had held her hands that morning, the way he had promised to call, and the softness in his eyes that had made her feel seen and safe. Now, every tick of the clock without hearing from him amplified the ache of separation. The market buzzed around her, vibrant and full of life, but Diem felt like she existed in a quiet, separate bubble, her heart tethered to a man miles away. Hours passed as she sold her produce, her energy slowly drained not only by the physical labor but by the emotional weight she carried. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the market stalls, Diem finally gathered what little remained in her basket and made her way back home. Her thoughts raced with anticipation and anxiety. She clutched her phone tightly, hoping to hear Toan's voice, but when she called him later that evening, the call went unanswered. Sitting alone in her small kitchen, the fading light casting a golden glow on the walls, she felt a wave of helplessness wash over her. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. She leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes, imagining Toan on some distant road, perhaps tired, perhaps caught in the bustle of a foreign city. "I hope he's safe," she whispered to herself, tears threatening once more. The longing in her chest grew heavier with each passing moment, and yet, amid the worry and sorrow, there was an undeniable thread of love and faith that bound her to him, a quiet, steadfast hope that Toan would return to her, safe and unharmed, just as he had promised. Night had fallen, draping the village in a quiet, almost oppressive darkness. Diem sat alone in her small living room, the dim light of a single lamp casting soft shadows across the walls. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her phone, scrolling through her contacts with a hesitant hope that Toan might appear on the screen. She had called him repeatedly, but each time the line rang only to be met with silence, the call eventually dropping into voicemail. Her heart tightened with each failed attempt, a mix of worry, longing, and helplessness building into an almost unbearable weight. She tried to reason with herself. Perhaps he was in a meeting, or traveling through a remote area with poor reception. Maybe the distance and the time difference were to blame. Yet, no rational thought could completely calm the rising tide of fear in her chest. Each imagined scenario seemed more perilous than the last: rain-soaked roads, late-night traffic, unforeseen delays, even accidents that could strike without warning. The very thought made her stomach twist into knots. Diem wrapped her arms around herself, seeking comfort that was nowhere to be found, and let out a shaky breath. Memories of that morning flooded her mind, the last moments she had spent with him, the warmth of his hands, the soft reassurance in his eyes. She could still feel his presence as if he were standing right beside her. Yet the cruel reality of his absence pressed down heavily. Her mind raced with questions. Was he cold? Was he hungry? Was he tired beyond measure, navigating unfamiliar streets under a relentless schedule? The uncertainty gnawed at her, leaving her restless and unable to settle. She rose from her chair and paced the room, the wooden floor creaking under her steps, each sound amplifying the emptiness she felt. Diem glanced out the window into the night, the stars distant and indifferent to her worries. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying a chill that made her shiver. She pressed her hand to the glass, imagining Toan somewhere out there, moving along the darkened roads, perhaps facing challenges she could only imagine. She longed to be at his side, to shield him from harm, to assure herself with the certainty of his safety. But reality offered no such solace. All she could do was wait, hope, and pray that he would return to her without incident. As the hours crept by, Diem sat back down, clutching her phone tightly as though her grip alone could bridge the miles between them. Her thoughts oscillated between fear and hope, a cruel pendulum swinging with every passing moment. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the bustling energy of the market and the warmth of their morning together. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall freely, determined to remain composed even as anxiety threatened to consume her entirely. Finally, she leaned back, resting her head against the wall, closing her eyes to the dim light. In the stillness of the night, she whispered a fervent plea, one she had repeated countless times in her mind over the past hours. Please be safe, Toan. Please come back to me. The words, though fragile, carried the depth of her love and the intensity of her fear. Even alone in the quiet of her home, surrounded by shadows and unanswered calls, her heart remained tethered to him, beating in rhythm with the hope that he would return. Though the night stretched endlessly, Diem refused to surrender to despair. She imagined the moment when she would see him again, when she could finally exhale the anxiety that gripped her so tightly. Until then, she would wait, watch, and hope, letting her love serve as both shield and compass, guiding her through the dark hours and toward the promise of reunion. For in every heartbeat, in every breath, She carried the unwavering certainty that no matter the distance, no matter the challenges, her Toan would find his way back safely, and she would be there, waiting with arms open and heart full of relief and love.